Hello and welcome to my channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Courtney, and in today's video, I'm going to be covering something a little bit different here, and that is, what is the difference between oracle decks and tarot decks? Going along your spiritual journey, this might come up and pop up, and you might be wondering, well, what's the difference between the two? I thought this would be a fun topic to share with you guys, so get ready because we are diving into today's video. If you are a returning subscriber, let me know by liking this video right now, or if you're just excited to learn the difference between oracle decks and tarot decks, give me a big like, it really does help me out. So I want to start off this video by saying I am not a professional tarot reader, I'm not a professional reader in any sense. I have been on this oracle tarot journey for the last 3 years, and I would still consider myself very much a beginner. I wanted to make this video because I have definitely noticed the difference between the two decks on my personal journey, and I'd love to just share with you this kind of beginner-friendly information. One of the first things I wanted to talk about before we jump into this video is kind of like the elephant in the room, and that is this considered to be a bad thing to do? Is this a bad practice? Is it a negative practice? Is it deal with like dark energy? And to be honest, this really depends on the person's beliefs, their intention behind working with oracle decks, and how they personally feel about divination. So for those of you out there that do not know what divination is, the definition of divination is the practice of seeking knowledge of the future or the unknown by supernatural means. Something that I personally believe when diving into tarot and oracle decks is really your mindset and your intuition and what you personally deem as something that is good or bad. When you are working with these tools, the cards act as like reminders. If you are seeking answers, it can be just a form of guidance or connecting with your angels or with the divine. And personally, I don't feel like when I'm connecting with my spirit guides or my angels, I don't feel like that is a bad thing. If anything, it gives me a lot of insight on a situation, and I feel extremely grateful that I can connect with them. So for those of you out there that are a little bit questionable on figuring out if you personally think this is bad or this is good, it really is up to you to trust your intuition and just literally do that. Alrighty, so now that we kind of touched on that topic, I'd love to go over the flow for this video. So I would love to talk about oracle decks first, then transition to tarot decks, and then finish off this video giving you any kind of like advice or beginner-friendly tips when going about your tarot or oracle deck journey. So as of today, I have 4 oracle decks in my collection, and I'm just going to show you kind of like what they look like right now as I talk about oracle decks. I actually got introduced to oracle decks from a friend. She told me she had an oracle deck, and I was really interested in kind of seeing what the cards would kind of say to me. I don't know, I was super new at the time, and I just was like, I wanted to do it. And I feel like that's a very major thing, is like you are interested and you want to see what messages pop up for you when you are flipping through an oracle deck or pulling cards from an oracle deck. With oracle decks, there are many, many different types, and they all have their own unique theme and their own unique messages. This is what's really cool about oracle decks. I will say, I do believe a lot of people tend to start off with oracle decks first, because I feel like it's a little bit less intimidating than going straight into tarot, for majority of people that is. When you're flipping through an oracle deck, you will notice there is this very positive, like love and light approach with oracle decks. There really isn't anything that I can think of that is anything like a warning or something like, hey, you need to be really mindful about this. There isn't a lot of in-your-face cards with oracle decks. The first deck I ever received was this Love and Light oracle deck from Doreen Virtue, and this deck is literally all about like Jesus. It's very like angel Christianity, like oracle deck. So I would say this one is definitely for anyone that's like a little bit timid, and they really just want to connect with like source. That's literally what this deck is. And there are a lot of very beautiful messages in this oracle deck. So I definitely recommend, if you are kind of nervous but you really want to dive into it, I definitely suggest this deck. My absolute favorite oracle deck that I have is this crystal mandala oracle deck. I am obsessed with this because it literally is all about crystals, and I love the messages that this oracle deck talks about. You'll kind of feel like when you are connecting with an oracle deck, you are connecting with your higher self. Most of the time, the messages, the cards that you pull will be spot on with your current situation. And it just feels like you are connecting with source, you're connecting with the universe. And it's almost like a confirmation of maybe things you've been thinking about wanting to do or changes you've been wanting to make, and seeing this, this card pop up can really transform that moment for you and push you towards becoming your highest evolvement. Oracle decks are great when you are just trying to get a taste of kind of like divination and just maybe just pulling a card for like a daily affirmation. It doesn't have to be anything too crazy. Like, you make of it what you want. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to go by a playbook or like by the rules. Like, just do what you want to do with an oracle deck, or with any deck in that sense. If you are looking for more of a beginner friendly, like I said, oracle deck, I definitely recommend. And also just pure like light messages. So now I'd like to transition over towards tarot. Just like oracle decks, have these messages and guidance for us to receive, and most of the time it is in a very positive, loving, light type of way. Where tarot comes in and how it's a little bit different is that tarot is very in your face and will be blunt with situations. It's almost like having a friend tell you like the truth of a situation. Like, are you really being honest with yourself? Are you really listening to your needs right now? Because I don't think you are. You know what I mean? That's kind of like the energy of what a tarot deck brings. What makes tarot a little bit more kind of like, I guess, like adult in a sense, it's more mature than oracle in some cases, is that tarot has a specific kind of like archetype for every card. So in a tarot deck, there are 78 cards that make up the tarot deck. And a tarot deck is split up into two separate groups. There's a major arcana group, which are archetypes that are like a bigger picture, kind of like your life journey, significant lessons for you to learn. And then there's this minor arcana, which represents common day-to-day things that make up your life. They're split up into 4 different suits, which is the swords, the wands, the cups, and the pentacles. So there really is kind of like a more of a structure towards tarot decks. So I would say the most common tarot deck that's out there is the Rider-Waite tarot deck. I feel like I might have said Rider-Waite tarot deck. This is my tarot deck that I have. I have the extra large version, the bigger cards. And I would say that I have been dabbling in tarot for less than a year. So again, I'm still very new on my journey, but I gotta say I have been favoring tarot more than the oracle decks. I feel like a lot of people are timid to start their journey with tarot. They feel really nervous. I have personal experiences when I have friends over and I ask, I kind of test them to see if they'd want to pull a tarot deck, because I know it can be kind of like, oh, like there is this kind of energy with tarot being like, oh, like, you know what I mean? And I feel like it doesn't necessarily, it isn't scary. It's just kind of like connecting with a card, seeing what you pull, and it can either resonate or it cannot resonate. It is what you make of it. If you put a scary connotation to tarot, then it's going to be scary for you. But if you look at it like, oh, I'm excited to see what the universe, what's next in this journey for me, or what energy I'm feeling right now, and you have that confirmation with a card, it can make you feel really good. So I'd love to give you guys some tips or advice if you're kind of like wanting to dive more into your divination journey with oracle or tarot decks. And the first kind of tip I have for you guys out there is whenever you pull cards, personally, I like to do this, I would get some kind of journal to document what you're pulling at that time. And personally, I do this with my moon journals. So I like to pull cards, I like to pull oracle cards during the full moon and the new moon. And then sometimes I'll pull one tarot card during that new moon or full moon too. I kind of like to wait it out a little bit with the tarot messages because I feel like it really resonates and it really is like this kind of like defining thing, like a representation of what I'm going through. So maybe I'll wait, like maybe once a month I'll do a tarot card pull rather than doing, twice a month a full moon and new moon oracle pull. So definitely document the cards you're pulling so you can look back and see how everything can kind of intertwine together. Another tip I have is if you can, I think it's really fun to go shopping for an oracle or tarot deck in person. I've heard that a lot of people believe that you should be gifted your first tarot deck or your first oracle deck. I don't think that's necessary. I think you can definitely go out and buy your own, tools. I don't think you have to wait for someone to gift them to you because sometimes maybe that'll never happen. And if you really want to experience it, you're gonna have to buy it yourself. So definitely don't feel like you have to be gifted a tarot deck or an oracle deck. Go to a store, walk around, see what's calling to you, just like you would pick a crystal. Let your intuition guide you and trust that that tarot deck or that oracle deck is for you. Another tip I have for really tarot, I guess, is if you had to pick a tarot deck to first start out with, I really do like the Waite tarot deck because the illustrations are just so classic. You'll see those type of illustrations in a lot of other tarot decks. It's kind of like the main one that a lot of people prefer is the Waite tarot deck. So if you're wanting to start your tarot journey and you're like, I don't know which one to get, I would suggest that one. This next tip is kind of a big one, and that is to keep an open mind when you pull an oracle message or a tarot message that doesn't really resonate with you. Sometimes we can pull cards and we can be like, I don't know what this means. Or you can pull a tarot card or an oracle deck card and be like, this makes me kind of like sad almost. Like maybe you're kind of confronted with something that you don't really want to face at that moment. And I would just say be open in that process. I know I have definitely pulled a card and been like, oh, it's kind of like, oh gosh, like maybe I do need to do X, Y, and Z to feel better or whatever it may be. Keep an open mind in that process and don't let your emotions like get the best of you if you pull something that doesn't really resonate. To wrap up this video, if you are feeling this urge, this calling to get a deck, and maybe you're a little nervous, you're a little timid, or you don't want to be judged by others, honestly, tap into yourself and think about, is this the time to really start this journey? Am I ready to do this? Remember that your intention behind, pulling cards or diving into divination is what matters most. If you are having a positive mindset and a positive outlook on pulling cards and interpreting your cards or what have you, that's all that really matters. Another big thing to just be mindful of is to not take anything too seriously. Have this kind of lighthearted approach when you are pulling cards to see what pops up. And don't be so reliant on, pulling a card if you have a question or if you're trying to figure something out. You always want to use your intuition, go with your gut feelings, and just trust that. Trust your inner compass. Alrighty guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video as we dove into a beginner-friendly view towards oracle decks and tarot decks. I hope this brought insights to you if you are kind of trying to figure out which way you want to go or kind of understanding the difference between the two. I hope this video can help you out in that process. If you liked today's video, please give it a big thumbs up. If you are new here, I would love it if you subscribed. And I would also love to hear from you guys, kind of like your take on the difference between oracle decks and tarot decks. If you are more experienced and you really love diving into divination and you want to explain it even more than me, go write it down in the comments, you know, have your take on it. Everyone here is learning and wants to learn from each other, so please do not be shy. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. I had a great time, and I will see you in my next one.